Welcome, everyone, to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill Gross. It is the U.S. Open 2025 early round show from my New York hotel room. I'm here for U.S. Open Radio, as I was last week over the course of Fan Week or Qualifying Week. I'm here also for the first 10 days of the main draw. And these shows end up being very kind of notebook dump style. No deep dives on the matches because, let me talk about my experience here. This is how I experienced the U.S. Open, which is very different from the other majors, as you could imagine. So first off, throughout the day, I am kind of listening to our broadcast the whole time while I'm on the air, naturally. But my role is not, I'm not one of the main play-by-play broadcasters. I am more of a reporter with U.S. Open Radio. So I'm interviewing players after matches, which is awesome, and I'll try to bring those insights when I can to this show and also to my social media feeds selectively. Other than that, though, when the main broadcast is focused on one match, which is usually whatever's happening inside Arthur Ashe, I've got my headphones on, listening to the commentary of that match, but watching whatever match I decide is most important outside of our main focus, which is oftentimes the match on Louis Armstrong, but sometimes it's grandstand, sometimes it's 17. Like last night for the Rune Struff match, I was out on 17 because, we had an upset alert on our hands, which ended up being an upset, Struff over Rune, so I was out there. So then basically the broadcast will throw it out to me intermittently for regular updates on the matches that they aren't covering on a point-by-point basis. And that's my role. And then sometimes it changes. Sometimes I'll go into the studio with them and do talk segments, preview segments. And other times I will be on the main match that they're focused on just as a third wheel of the broadcast. And I would be the person inside the stadium while the main play-by-play and analyst or analysts, they would be in the studio. So I'd kind of be the person who had the ability to paint the picture from inside the venue. So that's what I do during the U.S. Open. It's awesome. I love it. It changes the show, of course, because I'm not in front of my laptop choosing matches, watching every point, taking detailed notes, because I'm too busy doing my job. So I'm just going to run through a bunch of topics, some matches, and basically everything that I found interesting in the first, we're about an hour and a half into day 5 of the tournament. Of course, this is the first time where round 1 took 3 days. So I'm just going to go through stuff. And let me start with a couple things off the bat that I think people will find interesting. The thing that everybody is talking about this morning is Taylor Townsend, Jelena Ostapenko. The altercation verbal that they had after Townsend's win in the second round. So let's cover that first. It's the talk of the town. First off, Jelena Ostapenko, terrible at losing. Probably the worst loser on tour. Has never handled it well. This is well-charted territory. Her handshakes are icy. Her runner-up speeches are often pathetic. I've seen it firsthand. Like Luxembourg 2021, Clara Towson, who was a teenager at the time, I'll never forget it. Towson's runner-up speech was saying, "I'm sorry I played so bad." Never congratulated Clara. Never acknowledged her level. So this is kind of typical Ostapenko. So we know that. Now, she had 3 main complaints. Ostapenko said that Taylor Townsend did not apologize for a net cord. I've actually seen this before. I could be mistaken. Maybe Taylor sometimes does, but I think it's possible that Taylor Townsend actually does not apologize for let courts. Because I've seen this before. Second complaint is that Taylor was inappropriately leveraging the crowd. I don't even know how to really characterize this or describe it because I don't really understand what the complaint is. That she was firing him up? She was pumping him up? I mean, okay, I guess that's complaint number 2. Number 3 is that Taylor in the warm-ups came to the net instead of rallying from the baseline to begin the warm-up. So those are the three complaints that led to Jelena confronting Taylor in a hostile manner. Are these valid? Let's go through them. The first one, no apology on the net courts. I feel like the apology etiquette that we have in tennis, I'm not against it. I'm for it, to be honest. And I don't think it's a true apology. I think it's an acknowledgement that you got a little lucky. That said, there are some really silly inconsistencies. For example, let's say somebody hits a net cord and then I get a sitter and I put away an easy winner. I don't have to apologize, even though in this case the net cord favored me. So it's only when you get the trickle over, it's only when the person who hit the net cord wins the point, then they have to put up a hand. But if it's luck the other way around, no problem. So I think there's some inconsistencies. It's a little bit silly in some ways, but for me, first of all, as a player, I would rather win a point any other way. So in that sense, the apology is genuine. Like, all right, I'd rather win any other way than that. I'd rather not lose the point. I'd rather net cord winner than lose the point. But, there is some sense of genuine remorse when it comes to let cords. Again, in the sense that I'd rather win a point any other way. And it's just an acknowledgement that you got lucky. So I am pro apologize for net cords. But if my opponent, in this case Taylor Townsend, just doesn't really do it, to be honest, pretty easy thing for me to get over. Like, I'll get over it. Jelena obviously couldn't. The second one about the crowd is total nonsense. I don't understand where Ostapenko's even coming from here. I don't understand exactly what the gripe is. So I'm just going to move on to the third one, which is beginning warm-ups volleying. This would bug me. This would bother me, I think. And I've had junior tennis moments in the past where I've been bothered by the way my opponent has decided to warm up. So I actually don't blame Ostapenko for being annoyed at that. If Taylor started at the net, which, by the way, I have not confirmed. I don't have video confirmation that is how the warm-up began. But that's what Aliona said. So I'd argue, you've got a somewhat valid complaint in terms of, well, why don't we just agree to warm up from the baseline at the start? Because that's kind of what everybody has agreed to do. Like, it's kind of bad manners, I think, not to do that. I do think it's gamesmanship with Taylor. Like, I think she's trying to have some presence and send a message like, I'm going to be up here all day. Let's go. Like, I do think that's already taking place in the warm-ups. So I don't blame Ostapenko for being annoyed at that. But then there's a matter of what Jelena actually said to Taylor. And that's where I think it goes from, these are just two players. Ostapenko, who's not a good loser and is confrontational at times. Taylor Townsend, who is also sort of, I'd say, like, the way she competes is very cutthroat. Like, this is a combination that is obviously sometimes going to lead to sparks and ultimately fireworks. So it's okay. And I kind of like those matchups. It's the content of what Ostapenko said that has, in some ways, probably crossed a line. Two things can be true. All right, the first thing that is true is in the United States, if you tell a black person that they have no education, that is going to be considered a microaggression or a dog whistle or a comment that has, racial undertones. You do not tell a black person in the United States that they have no education. You do not. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. It's in the history. In the U.S., for long swaths of U.S. history, black people were either denied education altogether or denied an equal quality of education. And then after that, said lack of education was weaponized, used against the entire people, the black community. And that is why you do not call a black person uneducated in the United States. But Jelena Ostapenko is from Latvia, and English is not even her first language, and I just don't know if she clocks any of that. And I don't think it's fair, really, and I don't really know how to, like, hold what the level of accountability is for somebody who's from Latvia. Now, I'm not going to act like Ostapenko saying that is the same as an American saying that, because as an American, you should really know what it means. And as a Latvian, I'm not sure. I don't know. So that's where I stand on what she actually said. No class, no education. Does it cross a line in the U.S. in terms of kind of a racial undertones? Absolutely. But Ostapenko's Latvian, and that makes it hard to know exactly, like, you know, people were saying that she meant not educated on tennis etiquette. In reality, like, no. Of course, I don't think Ostapenko was saying you're not educated in tennis etiquette. I don't think that's really what she meant. But I also think that given English not even being her first language, like, I don't even know if she would always have at her disposal the articulations that she would be looking for to even communicate her dismay with Townsend in a way that maybe she would like. So that's where I struggle to get really deep into the actual things that Ostapenko said. That's where I stand on it. Everybody can weigh in. All right, in terms of early round drama, first of all, Jack Draper withdrew. Jack Draper withdrew with an arm injury. This came as a pretty big surprise to me, considering he played the mixed doubles. He won his first round match. He dropped a set, but I didn't cover his match, but I heard he looked fine. I heard at the very least he looked healthy. So I was not expecting withdrawal. I don't know if something happened in practice. Okay? I don't know. But pretty unfortunate for Jack. Pretty unfortunate because he was on a pretty good run of health, actually, last couple years. But now he's missed the North American hardcourt summer. Injury took him out of a major. We'll see how he manages this latter half of the year. I don't know if the Vori stuff has anything to do with it, because he did just sign a massive, massive clothing deal with a lot of guaranteed money. But, you know, I've seen players show up just to satisfy a sponsorship obligation, and normally it doesn't look like what it looked like for Jack this week. It doesn't look like playing a doubles tournament where nobody would have batted an eye if he didn't play the mixed doubles. If he wanted to save himself, right, nobody would have said anything. And then he actually wins a match, right? I've seen Matteo Berrettini, for example, play Stuttgart, Hugo Boss Open, pretty much guaranteed that that was because he felt he had to for his sponsor, because he looked totally and utterly unprepared and not healthy enough to play. But Jack, it didn't seem like that this week. He won a match. I think sometimes you do see tennis players play for business opportunities in circumstances where they normally wouldn't. But I was not getting the sense that that was happening with Draper. Now I don't really know what to think about it. Again, it depends. Did something happen in practice? Did he re-aggravate it? I'm not sure. I still think the biggest upset of the tournament is Zarazua over Keys. Interesting that Maddie felt as nervous as she did. Made 89 unforced errors and lost to a player who cannot hurt her. Zarazua has tremendous consistency and good speed around the court, but she is in the bottom, probably the bottom 15 percentile of power if you look at the U.S. Open draw. And yeah, again, like Zarazua is a maximizer who I respect a lot, but Madison Keys should not lose to her. Keys made 89 unforced errors. Talked about after the match that she did that she got nervous, and she's definitely lost a lot of the discipline that we saw at the Australian Open when she got a lot better about her shot selection first half of the year in terms of playing into big targets, using the speed and the power of her shots into big targets to kind of do the damage, not squeeze the lines, not take the backhand down the line as often. All these things she did to just kind of find higher percentage tennis. She's lost her way in that area a bit recently. And the Australian Open title, it didn't really relax her, which is, look, you could have seen it going either way. You could have seen it going, all right, I've won my major. I've kind of made it. I've kind of done what I set out to do. Now I can play with freedom. That was one way. The other way it goes is, now the attention is on me again. I'm supposed to do well at these tournaments. It's 2016 all over again. 2017 all over again. Where Keys is like, she's a favorite. And she has to deal with that. And that's the way I think it's more gone for Maddie. All right, Holger Rune is another upset that we can cover. Jan-Lennard Struff came through qualifying. He has not had a good year. His record against top 50 opponents coming into this match against Rune was 2-11. I believe he was 11-18 on the season, but he's won now 5 matches in a row. He's played his best tennis, despite being 35 years old. We know that he's played a lot of his best tennis, 33, 34, last couple of years, with a pretty severe hip injury kind of wedged within that time frame. So because Struff just hadn't looked like himself this year, I did not have this clocked as an upset potential. I did not. But after watching the 5th set, that looked a lot like 2023, 2024 Struff at his best, in those flashes, in those moments of excellence where Struff is an offensive juggernaut. I came away more impressed with Struff than I was disappointed with Rune, and you guys know that I've been very willing to be critical of Holger. But I thought this was about Struff playing perfect clinical attacking tennis. Where you'd fault Rune, and where this can be a difficult matchup for Rune, is beating Struff is all about serve and return. That's what beating Struff is about. Because you've got to serve well enough to escape his aggressive returning and to force him to move laterally, defend, play from neutral, push him back. Can't let him get that first strike in. Can't let Struff get the first strike in, right? And it's the same thing in Struff's service games. Now, this is a lot harder, which is why Struff is going to hold serve a lot, but you got to try to get to neutral with Jan-Lennard. And then you can take advantage of his massive, massive weakness, which is his lateral movement. He just doesn't move right to left all that well. You've got to set up points in a way in which you are opening up the opportunities to make Struff play some defense and make him play some neutral baseline rallies. And this is where, you could fault Rune a little bit from a skill development standpoint. The serve is not really elite, and the return is not elite. It makes him vulnerable sometimes, I think, to a matchup like this, where you've just got to avoid, you've got to play well on the first couple contacts of the tennis ball in order to get Struff in a position where you're not being essentially assaulted with his net rushing and his front foot tennis. And that's what Holger couldn't quite manage to do. Serve return. I think once points develop, that's where Rune's athleticism and his ball striking off of both wings, that's where at times he can be one of the best in the world. But serve return, I don't think it's quite there for him yet. And that was my big takeaway, along with Struff rolling back the years. Again, that sounds weird to say for a player who's peaked so late, but looking resurgent after not seemingly being himself throughout the year, or living up to his capabilities throughout the year. All right? Lorenzo Musetti, he's made some serve technique changes. It's been very difficult for him after the Roland Garros semifinal, retired to Carlos Alcaraz in the semis, missed the grass court lead-ups to recover from the injury, played Wimbledon, lost first round against Basilashvili, actually 1-4 record coming into the U.S. Open since the Roland Garros semifinal. This was insight that I was able to pick up based on chatting with Musetti after the match, because I saw him play, who was it? Who did he play first round? I'm actually blanking. But I was courtside for that match, and I noticed that the serve looked different, so I asked him after the match if he changed his technique. Oh, it was Giovanni Pecci-Pericard. I asked Musetti if he changed his technique, and he did. He did, and it was a pretty last-minute change. It was after he lost against Benjamin Bonzi in Cincinnati, and he felt as if he was losing too much percentage on his first serve because his weight was actually getting too far onto his lead foot. I'm going to say his front foot, which would be his left foot because he's a righty. So Musetti used to have a pre-serve ritual in which he would lean forward and actually lift up his right foot. Then he would lean back, put his right heel back down on the court, toss the ball up, and then go up into the ball. Essentially, there was a little bit of a weight transfer up or back and then up that Musetti would engage in. And Lorenzo felt that his toss was getting too far out in front and that his weight was getting too far out in front. So what they did is they actually changed the footwork and the pre-serve ritual, whereas now they've taken out they've simplified. His right foot starts planted on the ground. It no longer lifts up for him to kind of transfer his weight onto his front foot. He keeps his weight totally centered. There's no transferring whatsoever, and he goes straight down to up. So it's a very neutral, keep the weight centered, load the legs, and go straight up. And the effort has been to just center his balance more throughout the motion and to also avoid putting the toss too far out in front on the first serve. So obviously he served incredibly well against Pecci-Pericard, but it's really hard to figure out how somebody is serving against Pecci-Pericard because he is it's just a fact. It's going to sound harsh. He's the worst returner in the top 100. He's playing David Goffin actually right now, and Musetti serving 63%, which is fine. Winning 63% on first serve, that's a little low. But winning 61% on second serve, that's excellent. Goffin's actually a very good returner. So, all right. That's Musetti. Just wanted to clock that. So, look, Coco Gauff, not the only player who is making technical changes to the serve. It seems like Musetti had a little bit extra time compared to Coco, but technical changes to the serve right before a major, which goes completely against conventional wisdom. Most people would say that is a terrible idea, but I feel like players are starting to become more open to it. And maybe it's what we've seen with Sinner and Alcaraz and maybe a little bit Sabalenka. Look, the players at the top of the game, they are daring with their willingness to tinker. And the big three were like this. They're daring. You have to be willing to do this stuff. And I think, hopefully players are starting to become a little bit more allergic to stagnation. Obviously, part of it is panic. Part of it is a loss of confidence. If you're having to make a technical change right before a major, it's not a position that you necessarily want to be in. But I do prefer it to not changing anything if in your head already you're thinking, I don't feel good about this shot. I'm not in a good place with confidence on this shot. And you don't do anything, it's not going to get better. I mean, it might eventually, maybe, but I'd much rather make a little adjustment, and then at least mentally, and again, we're marrying technique and mental, because I think they have to be married. At least mentally, you say, okay, I've taken action. I've entrusted in people on my team to make an adjustment, and that potentially will make it better. And I just think that even opens up the ability to get confidence and to almost flush yourself of the negative, I don't know, the demons on a particular shot, and the negative thoughts that creep in, the lack of belief in a particular shot. I think once you make a change, it helps a player move past that. Speaking of which, let's talk about Coco. So Gauff's double fault number, I forget what it was exactly, but it was respectable against Ajla Tomljanovic. It was nothing to be too concerned about. But when she was serving for the match at 5-4 in the third, she double faulted twice in a row to go down love 30. So that's kind of the concern here, is like, once the pressure is really ratcheted up to the maximum, what's it going to look like? Of course, Coco, everybody probably knows this who's listening. She brought on Gavin McMillan, biomechanical expert, recently used or formerly used by Aryna Sabalenka. Gavin is really interesting because he's not a tennis coach. He's a biomechanical expert who has trained pitchers in baseball. He's trained football players. He's trained basketball players. Like, this guy's knowledge of the human body and how it is supposed to move literally transcends sport. And that makes him a very, very fascinating character, I think, in this grand scheme of things. But you guys, I put out a TikTok and an Instagram reel and a YouTube short, basically, on all my short form platforms. And please do follow me on those platforms. For the very reason that I just went through with Musetti, I support the changes that Coco has made. Now, I don't know why she did all of this in front of TV cameras, in terms of being out on the practice courts, and literally it looked as if Gavin McMillan was teaching Coco how to serve for the first time, because they really were going back to basics and trying to hit the fundamentals and kind of rework some of the fundamentals, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not surprised that they were going that route, but they could have gone indoors. They could have gone to, John McEnroe's tennis facility on Randall's Island, get away from the TV cameras. Instead, Coco, and maybe this was by design, she wanted the world to see it, that she was reworking the serve technique. Either that, or she didn't consider the fact that there were going to be TV cameras all over this. So that part was interesting, but I'm just a fan of the initiative. I really am. And I don't think it can get worse than what it was throughout the summer. And by the way, against Tomljanovic, it didn't get worse. And let's see how it plays out. I mean, it's going to be very interesting, because at face value, I couldn't watch this match. I was calling a different match at the time. Tomljanovic apparently played very well, despite the fact that throughout the year, I feel like her movement has really suffered post-knee injuries. Tomljanovic played really well, apparently, but also Coco had to scrap. Coco just barely got through that one. She does that better than anybody else. Can I say this before I move on? Coco Gauff's court coverage is probably the most overwhelming attribute in all of women's tennis. If I could get one thing, if I could start a player with one attribute on the WTA Tour, I would want Coco's court coverage. That's probably what I would start with, because I have seen Coco win far too many matches leaning primarily on that. Let's get to Novak Djokovic. Probably should have done this earlier. So he's got 2 matches down, but it hasn't looked great, specifically in the fitness department, against Lerner Tien and Zachary Svajda. Now, Tien seemed pretty overwhelmed by the occasion. It was very out of character how high his error rate was. Svajda did not look overwhelmed. Certainly doesn't show anything in the face, never does, and was playing really well. But he started cramping end of the second set, which is way, way earlier than you would expect anybody to start to cramp. But as we've seen in the past, sometimes in these big stadiums, that's nerves. That's just, you're playing Djokovic on ash, and it's such a heightened experience for the nervous system if you're Zachary Svajda, whereas for Novak, obviously, that's his house. That's where he lives in matches like that. And that goes a long way. And I think that was a big reason why he was able to beat his first two opponents without ever really being put up against the ropes or anything like that. I just don't think the fitness looks good. The positioning is not as consistent. The shot tolerance has been lower than what you would want. And against Tien, it was just, he was red in the face, right? His skin didn't look good. His chest was going up and down. You could see how heavy he was breathing constantly. He admitted he just didn't feel good. He didn't feel well out there. But I don't think he meant in terms of illness. I think it was just cardio fatigue. It was putting his arms up behind his head to try to expand the diaphragm and get more oxygen into the lungs. Like, these were the kinds of things that he was doing. Tien didn't play well enough to take advantage. So I don't want to speculate too much in terms of what to expect moving forward, but as you guys know, and probably the most debated portion of my preview prediction show was Fritz over Djokovic in the quarterfinals. Let me reiterate my stance here. If Novak Djokovic is playing well, I don't think Taylor Fritz beats him. Djokovic owns Taylor Fritz. The reason I put Fritz in the semis was not because of that head-to-head, not because I think Taylor is ready to beat Novak or conquer Novak. It's because I wasn't sure that Novak was going to be ready, prepared, fit. And after two matches, I still am left with those questions. Is he fit enough? Has he prepared well enough? Because he didn't play Cincinnati, because he didn't want to part ways with his family for that extended period of time. That was a decision that he made, and it's very understandable at his stage of life. We won't go any further now, but the question is, based on that decision that he made in terms of how he was going to prepare to this event, has that cost him fitness? And is was the off-court training that he did, whatever he did, was that actually enough to show up at this tournament and give himself the best chance to win it? So far, looks like no. It's Cam Norrie next, another opponent who Novak has pretty much owned. Norrie took a set off of him in Geneva. Djokovic killed Cam in Paris. Very straightforward. But Norrie is going to like what he sees on film here. I don't know if Cam's going to be good enough to really make an impact, but he's going to love seeing Novak suffer in the long points, and Norrie will probably lean into that quite a bit. Try to make things as physical as possible, which has been the blueprint against Djokovic consistently. It's just, obviously, it's hard to take that plan all the way to the promised land because Djokovic has become such a good point shortener and just so lethal offensively that he's able to dominate you in the 1-4 points, increase the frequency of those 1-4 shot rallies, and kind of just get by on that. Honestly, you could really bump it up to 8 shots, 1-8 shots, because to really win a match based on cardio is not an easy thing to accomplish, which we've seen. But once the opponents get better, and Novak, first of all, has less of that 1-4 shot rally success because his weapons aren't damaging as much. He's getting neutralized more often. And once he faces guys who are actually making him run more, making him defend more, which is much more tiresome. Attacking takes way less energy than defending. That's when the fitness levels start to get tested even further. And what we've seen so far is obviously he's made semifinals and Sinner has been the step too far, but he does not look as good to me so far in New York. Let me be specific. He does not look as fit to me so far in New York as he did in Australia and Paris and Wimbledon. I want to end on a couple of things that actually have to do with the tournament itself. Now, obviously, when I'm talking about these things, I'm an employee of the USTA this week, so it's not as if I'm a journalist here, but I do have some information I want to share with you guys and some observations I want to make with you guys, and I think it's still going to be valuable because this is information that will probably be new and things that you listening and watching probably aren't aware of. The first thing, ticket prices. Ticket prices have been a big talking point at the U.S. Open this year. I got some interesting information from the chief commercial officer at the USTA. Her name is Kirsten Corio. Statistics that I would like to share. The average face value ticket. Face value meaning these are the tickets that are sold by the USTA. $190 US. The average resale price, this was as of Sunday before the event started, $540 US. So obviously the reason the USTA was very happy to share those numbers with me and my broadcast colleagues is because they want people to know. I just think this is interesting. To actually have the numbers is interesting. They want people to know that the prices, which most people have felt are pretty out of control, are to a certain extent out of the U.S. Open's hands because they sell a ticket at face value. Once it goes to the resale market, they no longer control the pricing. I'll leave that at that. 2 changes to the tournament this year. The first one is one that you may have noticed. Day sessions on Arthur Ashe are now beginning 30 minutes earlier than before. They used to start at noon. Now they're 11:30 a.m. local time. This is the first time that I've seen a major, one of the slams, adjust their tournament schedule based on the verifiable truth that matches are getting longer and longer. And what would happen occasionally when there are a couple of long matches is the day session would bleed into the night session. Not only would that create a crush of fans, which wasn't ideal, especially for those ticketed for the night session, but also it would sometimes push the night session back into the wee hours of the morning, which is something that the tournament is trying to avoid whenever possible. So that's a great adjustment, and I think that tennis needs to become aware of the lengthening average match duration and make adjustments where fit. So kudos to the U.S. Open for doing that. The other thing that they've done, this is something that I've talked about before on the show. Tournaments love to break attendance records. It's a point of pride for them. It signals increased popularity of the tournament. And then after the event is done, they can put out a big press release and do a victory lap and say that a record number of fans attended the tournament this year. And I think last year, I forgot what the number was, but there was a big milestone number that the U.S. Open wanted to hit, and they hit it. They hit it, and they were very proud of it. Great. But obviously, there's a balance here. You can sell too many grounds passes, overcrowd the grounds, make it so that fans are often not able to get into the matches that they want to see in the general admission areas of stadiums like Louis Armstrong and Grandstand, especially come the third round. The U.S. Open has made an adjustment this year. I haven't been to the Australian Open, but I've heard a lot of complaints recently that it's become overcrowded. The U.S. Open made an adjustment this year after I think some people felt it was overcrowded last year. Less grounds passes are being sold across Labor Day weekend. So they've actually reduced the number of tickets sold. I don't have the specific numbers, but I just find this to be an interesting aspect of the business side of tennis. You can go after attendance figures. That's great. You can have your press release and your victory lap, but you have to be very mindful that you're not overcrowding these events because at the end of the day, these are major tournaments that are going to sell out no matter what. It's just a matter of how many tickets you actually decide to sell. All right. Hope this was enjoyable. Probably come back in a few days with another show. But, I'm not going to be super committed to any like strict recording schedule at the moment. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.